It's a beautiful day in this LibertyHood, a beautiful day for a candidate. Would he be mine? Could he be mine?
Welcome to the Lions of Liberty podcast. Here's your host, your guide, your shining beacon of liberty, Marc Clair.
Welcome back, Liberty Lead Bellies, to the Lions of Liberty podcast. As always, your home for great conversations about the ideas of liberty. This is the 250th episode of this program. Oh my God, we are halfway to 500 episodes. This, of course, means you can find today's show notes featuring links to everything we discuss over at lionsofliberty.com/250. And if you are a fan of this program, there are a couple other libertarian podcasts out there that I know you guys are going to love. You've got to check out Roger Paxton's Lava Flow podcast, the Johnny Rocket Launchpad, and of course, our friend Chris Spangle and the We Are Libertarians podcast. Check them all out. Now, today is no ordinary episode, as you might have gathered from the little jingle there in the open. It is, in fact, another edition of our bi-weekly look at the Gary Johnson, Bill Weld campaign through the libertarian lens, known as Mr. Johnson's LibertyHood. Now, normally you hear the voice of our resident Gary Johnson expert, Mr. Brian McWilliams, but he actually, ironically, gave up his LibertyHood this past weekend by getting married. So I guess it's tough to find time to record a podcast on your wedding weekend. Why, I have no idea. But regardless, I've got a special guest joining me for this in his stead. He is a fellow Liberty Los Angelean. If you're a member of our private Facebook group, the Lions of Liberty Forum, you might recognize him from posting in there. And if you're not a member, by the way, what the heck are you waiting for? It's free. It costs you nothing to join. All you got to do is search Lions of Liberty Forum in your little search bar on Facebook. Click to request to join, and as long as you don't look like a total freak, weirdo, or Nigerian prince, we'll get you right in there. Without further ado, I am pleased to welcome in Adam Choit. Adam, before we get going, of course, there's one thing I got to know first. Are you ready to roar? I will take that as a yes, my friend.
How was that? Was that good?
That was good. That was a roar.
I was practicing it last night with my wife. She thought.
Were you really?
That's a little crazy, but
you must have a very happy marriage if you're able to practice liberty roars with your wife at the wee hours of the night.
You know, her roar was much better, so maybe you ought to have her on.
Yeah, maybe. Can we? Is it too late to switch? Can we swap her out?
Maybe she's not home right now.
We'll stick with this for now, and we'll see how things go.
That works. That works for me too.
I maintain the option to sub your wife in at any point once she comes out. But Adam, there is a reason I brought you in here besides the fact that you're a cool dude out here in LA. I've come to know in the last year or so. But you actually attended a private event with Gary Johnson recently, and we're going to hear more about that in a little bit. But first, I want you to start off letting everybody know a little bit more about you, how you became interested in the ideas of liberty, and I guess just tell everyone kind of a little bit about your liberty creds.
Well, I'm originally from Long Island in New York, and I've lived in Los Angeles for over a decade now, and I was never really the most politically aware or politically active person. I kind of describe myself as someone who used to try to be aware of what's going on in the world, at least to have a clue. But I think that all pretty much changed around 2011, 2012. And it's a similar story to many liberty lovers out there as far as discovering Mr. Ron Paul on the internet. Like
that's doctor to you,
many
pal.
People. Doctor, no.
He didn't spend 6 years in Liberty Medical School to be called Mr.
That's true. They do it all for the title, I think.
There you go. All right. And I guess the rest is history. And I know we kind of stumbled upon each other through a mutual Facebook friend. And somehow you found about the Lions of Liberty. And here we are.
Yep, that's true. I mean, really, what I noticed is that this particular politician, Mr. Paul, Dr. Paul, was talking about many things that the other candidates on both sides of the aisle were not talking about, especially the Federal Reserve and the military-industrial complex. And from there, I guess the rest is history, like you said.
Speaking of history, why don't you tell us about this recent history that just took place in the last week or so? You got to attend a very small discussion group, a political discussion group here in LA, and Gary Johnson actually was an attendee at this event. So why don't you tell us quickly how you came upon this group, how you got invited to it, and what kind of set us up for this. How did you end up at this event with Gary Johnson? Something that not the most common thing that you'd think would happen to especially out here in LA.
No, that's for sure. It was a very unexpected invite, actually. I was invited to a political discussion group by a friend of mine, And she is part of this group that's been around for maybe 10, 12, 14 years. And it's mostly Democrats. It's pretty much all Democrats. A lot of Hollywood types, TV, film people. They just gather once a month, I believe. And she knew I was interested in politics and was a libertarian, and am a libertarian. So she just randomly emailed me and said, Gary Johnson's going to be speaking at our event. Would you like to come? And then I said, are you serious? And she said yes. And I showed up on that Sunday afternoon.
All right, so this is a Sunday afternoon. You're at this. I'm imagining a mansion in L.A. I have no idea why. I don't know if it's actually a mansion, but that's what I'm going to picture for the purposes of this exercise.
I wouldn't call it a mansion, but it's definitely a very nice house. And if she wants to switch with me anytime, I'll take her house, and she could take my little apartment if she's wants to switch.
So what was your feel of the room before we get to the Gary stuff? Do you definitely feel you're the only libertarian there from the get-go?
I think so. I mean, I think there was maybe one or two Republicans there, and maybe a couple of younger guys who were not really affiliated with any party or any ideology, but I definitely felt like the black sheep in the room for sure, as the only libertarian there.
And before we go further, if you guys want to hear the entire breakdown, beginning to end, of Adam's experience at this private event, he actually wrote it up as an article, which we've posted over at lionsofliberty.com. I will link to that article in the show notes for today's show. That's why I tell you guys about this stuff. You can find that at lionsofliberty.com/250 once again. And you can find the entire archive, while I'm at it, of this program of Mr. Johnson's LibertyHood at lionsofliberty.com/Gary. My plugs are over, so let's get into this thing. You actually broke down some JohnsONs and JohnsOFFs of your own from this event. So why don't you lead us down the pathway here, the pathway to your own little personal LibertyHood meeting here, and guide us through some of your JohnsONs and JohnsOFFs.
Gary basically opened his talk by saying he despises hypocrisy and hates crony capitalism. And then one of the earliest questions he got was about the TPP. And this woman in the crowd asked, isn't the TPP basically an example of crony capitalism? And basically Gary responded to that saying that the TPP is a free trade bill and that he will sign anything to make things better. And those are exact quotes from Gary, but he didn't really refute the woman. And just because Gary says something is free trade or makes things better, it doesn't make them true.
Which is interesting because not that long ago, he mentioned that he thought the TPP was laden with crony capitalism. That was before he switched his view and said that he supported it. So it's interesting that it's a progressive person, I'm guessing, or a progressive leaning person that brings up the crony capitalist aspect, while libertarian Gary Johnson is just kind of brushing it off.
Yeah, I think Bill Weld has a lot to do with this, and I think there's something to do with him basically forcing Gary to support the TPP, which is weird because Gary's not going to be president. Let's face it, that's very, very unlikely to happen. So why would he support an issue that his entire base, or libertarians and even a lot of progressives and other people he's trying to reach out to, are against? So this really makes no sense to me. So, as you might guess, this was a big JohnsOFF.
JohnsOFF, not starting off on a great foot at this event from the libertarian perspective. So JohnsOFF for his stance on the TPP, which, especially when there's such a great opportunity to address crony capitalism to a progressive person, and at least say, look, I might think it's better, but I am definitely wary of the crony capitalist aspects. There's ways he could still say he supported it and still kind of play into that crony capitalist thing, because it's just so great to hear that coming from the quote unquote other side. And it's sad to see he didn't really capitalize on that at all. All right, what else we got?
We have healthcare, and I kind of looped that in with just talking generally about the role of the federal government. It was just a sort of a general question about healthcare, and really, as you might imagine, with a room full of liberal progressive Democrats, everyone is just very eager to just throw federal money or throw money at the problem, throw tax money at the problem. But Gary just didn't do a very good job here, in my opinion. He didn't talk about crony capitalism when it came to healthcare. He didn't really talk about how there should be more choice. He didn't talk about any market solutions. He didn't bring up any unintended consequences of giving government bureaucracies more power. He didn't criticize Obamacare at all. There was just so many directions he could have gone in, but he just kind of stumbled and rambled and to the hostile room. And it just didn't go well.
Wait, Gary stumbling and rambling? Come on. I have a hard time picturing that.
I'm serious. I'm serious.
Yeah, he does that. So I'm guessing this is another...
Yeah, that would be a JohnsOFF as well.
The sad thing is, I mean, these feel like layups, especially with this audience. There's so many angles. I mean, did you get the sense that Gary just didn't feel like being there, so he's just kind of like pushing this stuff aside, or was he giving an earnest attempt to answer these questions, and this is just his style, I guess?
I think it was a little bit of both. I don't think he wanted to be there. And I mean, if you want, I could tell you kind of how he ended up there, because it's sort of...
Well, yeah, let's take a little sidebar. Why, if he seemed like he didn't want to be there, why the heck was he? Because this is not really his voter base. I mean, you, and maybe not even you, might be the only person in that room that might vote for him. So why was he at this thing?
No, it wasn't a fundraiser. It wasn't a rally. It was a room full of 95% Democrats, except for maybe one or two or three more conservative Republican types. But... basically what happened is, I got this story after Gary spoke, that one of the very few Republicans there actually had some pretty big-time connections to the GOP on the national level. So believe it or not, it was the GOP forcing the Libertarian candidate, Gary Johnson, to go speak to a room of Democrats.
What a bizarre world we live in.
You cannot make this stuff up. And basically what I got from this is that Gary's still very connected to the establishment and establishment politics and big party politics, as much as, we see him as a third party, or at least some people do. But I think that's just another piece of evidence that shows he's kind of part of the establishment, at least on some level.
All right. So what's our next item here? I'm hoping we can get a JohnsON in here somewhere.
Yeah, I was just thinking that I think I should mix in a JohnsON, and then we'll go back to I'll mix them up, because I don't want it to make it too many JohnsONs in a row or too many JohnsOFFs in a row. So I'll try to balance it out.
You don't want to get accused of what we were accused of on Facebook earlier this week, of being too hard on Gary.
On Gary.
Which is funny, because I think about, we are critical of Gary, but we also praise him when it's appropriate. But compared to other libertarian podcasts, compared to Tom Woods, compared to Roger Paxton at the Lava Flow, compared to Jason Stapleton, I think we're really freaking easy on the guy, because those guys rip him to shreds.
They do. So. I think you guys are not far behind, though.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're trying.
My opinion.
We try to give him some, try to give him some love whenever we can, but he doesn't always make it easy. But let's do that right now. Where did he score a good point with you at this event?
I will give him credit for talking about the Federal Department of Education and saying that he wanted to cut it. He was challenged on this issue by
cut
the
it
room.
As in end it.
End it. Cut it.
That's a bold stance, and I love when he takes, on the rare occasions, he takes really bold stances like that.
And he was actually challenged by the room on this issue, but he was kind of confident and made some good points. And he made the point that there hasn't always been a Federal Department of Education. There wasn't one when George Washington was president. It's only been around since the 70s and the Carter administration. And he actually did a good job of breaking down how much money California sends to the federal government versus how much it gets back to reinvest in its own education, which is far less. So he made some good points, some fact-based things there, and I'll give him a JohnsON for that.
All right, a JohnsON. We finally got one. How did that crowd respond to that answer from him? Did they buy into it at all, or were they just kind of having a progressive synapse and not hearing it?
I think they bought into the answer. They didn't really seem to have much of a response to that, but it's hard to argue with facts. So, and Gary spouted out some facts, so. JohnsON.
What else we got here?
I am going to talk about his style and overall presentation.
Okay. What was he wearing? Now, I'm interested in that. I'm picturing him in, I don't know, like Zubas and definitely sunglasses on the top of his head and maybe like a tank top.
I have to tell you, before Gary arrived and people were just kind of mingling in the various rooms in the house, shortly thereafter, Gary does arrive. And when he walks in, out of the corner of my eye, I see what looks like a Jewish man wearing a yarmulke on his head, but then I look closer and I see it's Gary with his sunglasses on the top of his head. So I think he wore, it was jeans, sneakers, the sunglasses on his head, and I think it was a T-shirt. I'd almost be shocked if it was something other than a T-shirt.
That's kind of the classic Gary look, the sport jacket, the sneakers, some kind of T-shirt. He's got the businessy-ish, casual-ish style.
Yeah, it wasn't very businessy. it seemed more casual than anything. And I thought it was funny because Gary arrived with I don't know if it was a bodyguard or a manager or an assistant. It was like 2 or 3 guys with him. And they were all wearing suits. I thought the people in Gary's entourage were more presidential looking than Gary himself. So I don't know what else to say about that.
So what's he get for that style points?
Oh, he gets a JohnsOFF for sure. He's just sort of a fidgety, awkward guy, and I think we all know this. But combined with his mannerisms, his wardrobe, and his personality, it's a big JohnsOFF for sure.
What else we got at this event here? Any more positives or negatives we can highlight here?
Well, let's talk a little bit about foreign policy and non-intervention. A person in the crowd actually asked him a question about these islands in the East China Sea and expressed concerns about tensions rising between China and Japan. And to be completely honest, I wasn't sure exactly what she was talking about, but this almost became another Aleppo moment for Gary. I think she's talking about they're called the Senkaku Islands, sort of these uninhabited islands out there that are, I think they're Japan's, but there's some tensions with China. Anyway, he, started talking about non-intervention and being diplomatic with China. And he actually made a very good point, I thought, that if we can talk to China about the issue with these particular islands and get on good terms with them, this could actually help us deal with North Korea more. So I thought that was a good connection for Gary, and it was actually sort of a good intellectual point he made. And we know Gary's a pretty good peace candidate in general, especially compared to the other 2 maniacs on stage. Right. So for sure, I will give him a JohnsON. Those 2 maniacs are Trump and Hillary, if anyone was wondering who I was referring to.
Yeah, I think they probably could have guessed, but who knows? Maybe you're talking about Jill Stein and Darrell Castle, the Constitution and Green Party candidates.
They could be maniacs too, but probably in different ways.
Yeah. All right, what else we got at this event? Any more?
I'll talk a little bit about Gary's responses to my comments and questions. So being the only libertarian in the room, I didn't want to raise my hand immediately during the Q&A. I figured as a first-time invited guest and the only libertarian in the room, I would let other people ask their questions first. But eventually they did get around to me raising my hand towards the end of the Q&A. And basically I chimed in a little bit about the TPP, and I urged Gary and Bill Weld to reconsider their position on that.
Was Bill Weld there? Was he hiding in the background?
He was not there. And maybe Gary had an earpiece.
Well, I have a theory. I think he was in the house. You know where I think he was? With his face in the freezer. Come on.
Oh, man.
That was a layup.
Poor red-faced Bill Weld. But anyway, actually, backtracking a little, before I mention the TPP again, first I thank Gary for showing up here. And I mentioned the Commission on Presidential Debates.
And was he aware that you were the one libertarian in the audience at this point?
He was. When I actually shook his hand when he walked in the room, my friend, who was also one of the main hosts there, told Gary that I was a libertarian. It was funny because he almost seemed to be a little nervous by that.
He's like,
please don't ask me a bake the cake question.
I'm going to get real questions now.
Please don't ask me a bake the cake question is probably what.
Oh man, I really wish you did. That would have been. They wouldn't know how to handle it in that room. They wouldn't even know what the hell you're talking about.
No, they wouldn't. But before I made a couple of comments and questions and asked a couple of questions, Gary, I agreed with him about the CPD, the Commission on Presidential Debates, how it's bullshit that they're keeping him out. And it's a corporate-ran private organization. And I also criticized the polls that keep him out as being corporate-ran polls. So I think Gary actually smiled there, and he appreciated that. But after I got the compliments and nice thoughts out of the way, I challenged him on the TPP again. And I mentioned the secrecy surrounding the bill and the Congress people reading it in the basement of Congress. And I remember seeing that Ben Swan reality check about the TPP saying, basically, it limits access to medication for people, and the patents will be held longer by all these corporations. So I mentioned that as well, and he didn't really respond to that. I know the time was we were running up against the clock at that point, but he didn't even respond to that. But basically, what I asked after that was about the Federal Reserve, and I told him that I wished it was more of a part of his current campaign, an issue that he would bring up. And he wasn't really very strong on it in his response. He didn't talk about an audit until I brought it up. He didn't talk about ending the Fed. He basically said he just wants to see more consistency from Fed policies. And I thought that was kind of a lame vanilla answer. I mean, I was in a room for people who probably know very little about the Federal Reserve. And I think it was his chance to educate people at least a little bit about the Fed, encourage people to do more research on the Federal Reserve, as well as hitting on any criticisms he could. And he really didn't. It was just kind of rambly. So between not even responding to my TPP comment and just being kind of vanilla response as far as the Fed, I'll give him a JohnsOFF.
Another JohnsOFF for Gary. All right. What else can we highlight from this event?
I'll talk about just Gary's ability to survive, to show up, survive, and make it through the scrutiny of the room. Because, to be honest, the room was pretty much, well, very often at odds with him, even hostile at times towards Gary. And he had a good sense of humor about it for the most part, and he had a good sense of humor about Aleppo. And he actually wanted to prove to us that he knew his stuff, so he broke down the conflict in the region, naming all the warring factions involved. And later on, Gary was challenged rather boisterously on guns, and he wasn't the best on the issue, no, but he did explain the difference between machine guns and rifles, semi-automatic weapons. So he did actually stand up for himself when he was challenged on this, and he did stand up for himself a few other times throughout his talk. So I think he deserves some credit for that, just for surviving, showing up, and making it through the scrutiny of the room. I think he deserves credit. So I'll give him a JohnsON for survival skills.
So overall, what was your overall impression of Gary at this event? Do you think he did a good job considering his audience, even if maybe he didn't really want to be there? Or, do you think anybody might have been swayed whatsoever one way or another on any positions he said he gave out there? I mean, what was your overall impression? Not just your impression, but what you think that the rest of that room thought of him.
I think they thought he was a nice guy, a friendly guy. I thought that they thought he was coming across as honest and earnest, but I don't think he swayed them really on probably any issue, and I don't think any of them are going to vote for him. I think they'll probably all vote for Hillary Clinton, besides maybe a few Jill Stein people and maybe a couple of the Republicans in the room. But I don't know. It was tough. To be fair, I think it's going to be tough to change someone's complete ideology.
Sure. Maybe your questions got them thinking more than Gary's answers did.
I was actually going to mention that, but I didn't want to toot my own horn too much.
Well, I'll toot it for you.
More than a couple of people came up to me after Gary spoke and left and said, you know what, those are really good questions you asked. And they appreciated it, and they told me to come back as well. So I think my questions, and based on what people came up to me and said after, complimenting me on my questions and saying I asked good questions and had good comments, that I think I might actually have had more influence on the way people in the room might be thinking than even Gary himself did.
Especially if you end up coming back to this group and become a part of this discussion. I don't think there's any question you're going to have more influence on them than Gary Johnson did. So hopefully that's the case. And hopefully, we win hearts and minds one at a time, maybe one discussion group at a time. So for sure. I think the key is just got to tread very, very lightly and don't ram it down their throats. Just bring up questions and, insert your ideas where it makes sense.
Yeah, I think everyone has their own style. I mean, if you think about like people like Adam Kokesh or Eric July, those guys are kind of like more in your face, unapologetic. And there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone has their own sort of way to be an activist or to try to sway people to their thinking. I don't think there's one right way to go about it. But for myself, and especially for this group, I think I gotta take the higher road, and I can't walk into every meeting and be like, Hillary sucks, Bernie sucks, Democrats suck, and just be very critical of what they hold dear. I'd have to be very tread lightly is kind of what I'm thinking, kind of my approach with this.
Adam, we're going to take a quick break to get a word from our sponsors. When we come back, We're going to look at some recent news items and go through some more JohnsONs and JohnsOFFs.
Hey guys, this is Roger Paxton, and if you're fed up with the government running every single aspect of your life, but you're not listening to the Lava Flow podcast yet, then what's wrong with you? Check us out at thelavaflow.com, or just go back to sucking up to the government. The Lava Flow podcast, striking the root every single episode.
This is Chris Spangle, and I am the host of We Are Libertarians, which you can find in iTunes, Google Play, or at wearelibertarians.com. We are a podcast that brings you all of the irreverence that modern politics deserves by examining current events from a libertarian perspective. So please, check us out at wearelibertarians.com.
Hey everyone, the Johnny Rocket Launchpad is Liberty. Each week we strive to bring you the best guests in talk radio. The Johnny Rocket Launchpad delivers weekly interviews of noteworthy politicians, experts, and activists. The Johnny Rocket Launchpad is bringing the party to the Libertarian Party and launching ideas in your direction. Check us out at johnnyrocketlaunchpad.com, and you can hear me, Kurt Nelson, and the beautiful Heather Nixon talk about the ideas of liberty, rock and roll.
All right, we are back, and hey, be sure to check out all of our great friends, Roger Paxton at the Lava Flow, Johnny Rocket Adams at the Johnny Rocket Launchpad, and my man Chris Spangle and We Are Libertarians. All great podcasts. If you enjoy this one, good chance you're going to enjoy those too. Now, moving along, we are here still in Mr. Johnson's LibertyHood. We're going to break down some recent news events here with my man Adam Choit. Adam, you ready to do this thing?
We can do that. I'm down. I'm ready.
All right. Good. If not, you don't want to switch your wife out yet, right?
No,
You're still good?
I think we'll stick with me for now.
All right, so basically, the first one, we've obviously touched on this on our recent roundtable when we look back at the debate, but the Commission on Presidential Debates, this private company owned by the Republicans and Democrats who decides who gets to be in the debates, unsurprisingly said that Gary Johnson will not be in the debates. He did not meet the 15% threshold. I think there are major problems with the polls that they use, with the polls that they cherry pick, with the fact that how these polls are done. Many of the polls either don't mention him in the first place, or if they do mention him, he's mentioned last, or he's only mentioned if someone else brings him up. So the polls are just a mess. I think the polls actually sway people's judgment about things more than they actually reflect people's judgment. But regardless, it's not surprising. The point of this commission is to keep other voices out and to keep the Republican and Democrat stranglehold on the political system. So shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that Gary was not allowed into the debates. Now, there has been debate among libertarians about whether it's actually good or bad. At the end of the day, I think it's obviously is a JohnsOFF, because even though I have criticisms of Gary, I don't love the way he spreads the ideas of liberty. I think he would probably have some more embarrassing moments during the debate. At the end of the day, he would be the only one on that stage talking against the war on drugs. The only one that might get fired up about foreign policy, about the evils of our foreign policy, about the fact that innocent people are dying around the world because of our foreign policy. And we'll touch on his views on that a bit later. But I am going to go ahead and give his exclusion from the debates a JohnsOFF. Adam, what about you?
I will agree with that. Just based on no one on the stage, Hillary or Trump, will not mention the war on drugs. They will not have quite the non-interventionist foreign policy that Gary has, and the fact that America won't hear those ideas without Gary on the stage or anyone else, I think that's a reason for having Gary Johnson there for sure, wanting to have Gary there.
Now, moving along, some positive news, I guess, for the Gary Johnson campaign. After receiving an endorsement from this semi-celebrity, depending on your viewpoint, now Melissa Joan Hart, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, has actually officially joined the Gary Johnson campaign as the Connecticut chair of the campaign. So she's put her time where her mouth is. She sent out a tweet saying she liked what Gary Johnson had to say. I didn't know if it would be left at that and she would move along. A lot of celebrities said good things about Ron Paul and then he never heard from him again. So Melissa Joan Hart's actually backing this up. She's working for the Gary Johnson campaign in Connecticut. And what do you think about this? I don't want to monopolize the opinion here. So what do you think about MJH joining up with the GJ campaign?
I think just about any time a celebrity is open about supporting a libertarian candidate or the ideas of liberty in any possible way, shape, or form, I think that's generally a good thing and a JohnsON. Unless a said celebrity is some kind of delinquent or in prison or just somebody who's filled with scandals. But
right, you might not want Charlie Manson coming out and saying good things about Gary Johnson.
Exactly, but I think Melissa Joan Hart is someone who's not going to drum up too many harsh emotions from people, even if she has haters out there. So I think it's a good thing, and that's what libertarians and libertarianism needs, is really to cross over more into pop culture and have more celebrity endorsements and support. It'd be cool if LeBron came out as a libertarian. LeBron James, the basketball player I'm talking about.
I'm sure he's listening right now. So LeBron, please consider looking into the ideas of liberty.
I'll tweet this interview to him with the timestamp marked.
Yeah, now that he's mentioned, you can do that. All right, so I think we agree. That's nothing bad. No downside to Melissa Joan Hart here. Let's move on to some more interesting topics, shall we? Starting with what I'm going to go ahead and call Tonguegate. Yes, that's right. Gary Johnson recently was, I guess, called out by MSNBC. I don't know. They recorded a whole interview with him, but from all I've seen, they only put out this one clip from it. They were talking to Gary, and they were talking about whether he should be in the debates, what he would be like in the debates, and he had kind of a, well, let's just call it an interesting response. Now, you're not going to see the visual here, but I'm going to play a little audio of exactly what Gary said in this MSNBC interview.
And do you think if you were able to get on the debate stage that you could pull even with Trump and Clinton in these polls?
I do. And it wouldn't have anything to do with my debate performance either. It would just be that people would recognize that there's another choice and that there would be an examination of me and Bill Weld as who we are and what we've done, and not based on that. I think I could stand up there for the whole debate and not say anything and emerge as a leader.
Well, that was certainly interesting. So for those that couldn't tell, because you can't see it, the reason Gary's voice got all weird there is he decided to stick his tongue out and sort of bite his tongue and go, this is what would happen if I was taking out my tongue. He's basically saying, it doesn't matter what I would say up in the debate, just my mere presence there would draw some attention to some other things and get people thinking differently about other candidates, which about the candidates that are up there and other possibilities, which I think is true, but that was certainly an odd way to deliver that message. Adam, what did you think about this?
When I first saw this story kind of pop up on Facebook, I didn't click on it, I didn't bother. I just figured it's just something that the media is blowing out of proportion, some silly thing that's going to go viral. But then I actually watched it for the first time today, and it's so stupid what he was doing. I don't know what he was thinking, what made him think that was a good idea. It didn't accent or accentuate his point that he was trying to make at all. He was saying, I could go up there and say nothing. That's it. There's no reason for him to continue with this ridiculousness. So I don't know. I mean, is it the end of the world that he did it? That he did this tongue thing and made these weird sounds? No.
You know what? I'm actually more annoyed. I'm less annoyed by the tongue part than just of what he was saying. Like, what he was saying is stupid. Oh, it doesn't matter what I say. I can just be there saying anything. Like, that is not a compelling argument. No. You should be saying, I'm going to be up there bringing up the war on drugs, bringing up foreign policy. Like say why it's important for you to be there, not just the fact that you're another human being that exists that's running for president. It's such a dumb argument. Yeah,
that's a good point you're making. But to be fair, MSNBC may have cut that part out as well.
That's possible.
So who knows? But it was just so dumb, and I'm not really a fan of using the term like this is presidential, this is not presidential too much. But I don't know what he was thinking and how that would appeal to anyone who wants to see the president as someone who we respect.
So it sounds like we're both going to give this one a
JohnsOFF.
All right, moving along. Let's see. Now, this is one that's been on everybody's mind. Obviously, everybody knows about the Aleppo incident that was covered in the last edition of Mr. Johnson's LibertyHood, so be sure to go back and check that out. Again, lionsofliberty.com/Gary for all those episodes. And this was basically... I'm going to play the audio, I think, in a second, but just to set it up, he was being interviewed by Chris Matthews, and Chris Matthews basically just asks him, what foreign leaders do you admire? What don't you like? Assuming that everyone admires foreign leaders, so let's just take a listen to this real quick.
Who's your favorite foreign leader?
Who's my favorite?
Just name anywhere in the country, any one of the continents, any country. Name one foreign leader that you respect and look up to. Anybody.
Mine was Shimon Peres.
No, okay, I'm talking about living. Go ahead. You got to do this. Anywhere, any continent. Canada, Mexico, Europe over there, Asia, South America, Africa. Name a foreign leader that you respect.
I guess I'm having an Aleppo moment in the former president
But I'm
of
giving
Mexico.
you the whole world.
I know.
Anybody in the world you like. Anybody. Pick any leader.
The former president of Mexico.
Which one?
I'm having a brain.
Name anybody.
Fox.
Okay, who's your favorite foreign leader? Get him off the hook. Name a foreign leader you respect.
He was terrific.
Any foreign leader?
Merkel.
Okay, Merkel. Okay, fine. Save yourself.
Oh God, where do I even begin with this? Before I really get into it too much, let me just say it's a stupid question. It's a really stupid question. I give you a Matthews off for that, Chris Matthews, because come on, what foreign leader do you admire? I mean, this is not a question Hillary Clinton would ever get. It's not a question Donald Trump would ever get. It's a question meant to try to stump Gary once again. So the sad part is it worked. It worked like a charm. He seemed totally stumped. And I don't know. What do you think of even the premise of this question, Adam?
I tend to agree with what you're saying. I don't want to make a habit of stealing from Sarah Palin, but it was probably a bit of a gotcha question. But at the same time, while I might not be able to name every foreign leader in Africa and in other continents, Gary Johnson is running for president. And to steal a term and a description that Tom Woods uses for Gary, he's an intellectual lightweight, and that's really what he is. So not only is he an intellectual lightweight, he's just showing that he's just not very knowledgeable about the world more than anything. It's kind of sad. And there were a number of directions he could have gone in. He could have named no one. He could have said, you know what, I don't admire foreign leaders. I don't think we should be
that's
looking.
the obvious answer for a libertarian. There's no foreign leaders I can really think of I admire because every country in the world is out there infringing upon the rights of its citizens, and I'm looking to really change the way we view government, and I can't say I really admire any foreign leaders right now. That's the answer. Give that answer. Or if there is someone you can think of, I mean, there might be some foreign leaders that have done some good things. I think he was trying to bring up Vicente Fox, the former president of Mexico, who did take some very good stances against the war on drugs. And I think that's the direction he wanted to go, but he was having a Gary moment. And, I sometimes I wonder if he's still hitting the cannabis sativa stashes because he just really gets aloof. And what's hilarious is 2 seconds into this thing, Bill Weld tries to jump in. He's like, oh, mine's Shimon Peres, who's dead, by the way. And Matthews is like, no, you can't name dead guys here, Bill. So even Bill got like a little thrown off. I mean, just the whole thing just came across as just messy.
It just was not a good response. He could, like you said, he could have gone in the direction of, well, I don't admire any foreign leaders, but so and so have done some good things that I think are good for the world. Or he could have taken in the opposite direction, say, I don't admire any foreign leaders because they're all infringing on liberties and this and that. And he just didn't. It just wasn't a good response. Even if he didn't answer, even if he wasn't going to answer the question directly, he should have had a better response. Yeah, which shows that he's just not great at thinking on his feet. No, on top of being an intellectual lightweight.
No, he is. It's not the best combo.
And lacking world political knowledge.
If you were not an intellectual heavyweight, but you could still think on your feet and come up with some good answers, that's one thing. Or maybe you can't think on your feet, but you have so much knowledge that you're good to go. Like, you need one of these things, like one quality to get by as a presidential candidate, and he seems to just have none of them, and it's upsetting. So yeah, it sounds like we're once again in agreement here. This is going to be a JohnsOFF.
I agree. JohnsOFF.
All right, let's move on here. And as I mentioned, Gary was not in the debates. We all know that. Again, go back to the last episode. Click back in your iTunes feed, your Stitcher feed, wherever you're listening to this thing, episode 249 for our full Libertarians in Living Rooms Drinking Liquor style roundtable discussion about the last presidential debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. Yeah, but during the debate, Gary Johnson and Bill Weld, they were being asked some questions by reporters, and Reason.com covered this. We'll link to it in the show notes, but they basically asked him, about foreign policy, and Gary started going off. Actually, I'm not even sure if the setup was about foreign policy, but that is the direction Gary took it. And he started saying, this is just ridiculous. I'm so angry about our foreign policy. People are dying all over the world. You guys are worried if I can name a foreign leader or can name Aleppo. Meanwhile, the policies of Hillary Clinton, the policies of this U.S. government are resulting in the deaths of thousands and thousands of innocent people. And he's getting so angry. My only issue with how fired up he was getting is he still kept his hands in his pockets the whole time, which kind of downplays your anger a little bit. Like, at least wave your hands around a little bit and show some emotion. But my favorite part of this exchange, I know you watched the video beforehand too, is Bill Weld clearly embarrassed in the background while Gary's going off on this. Bill Weld just like, oh god, this is weird. But maybe it was weird to Bill Weld, but to me it was awesome because he finally showed some emotion. He finally showed that passion that you would need. And they followed up saying, is this the Gary we would see on stage? And he said, you're damn right, this is the Gary Johnson you'd see if I was on that stage. And frankly, he came across like a real person. The kind of, I'm not going to put him on that level at all, but the kind of fire we saw from Ron Paul when it came to foreign policy, that human emotion of just being sick of seeing all this death and destruction all over the world. And I thought it was a wonderful moment. What about you?
I agree, except for one thing that I thought was missing from this rant, and that would be specifics. He did talk about death and destruction and the U.S. foreign policy causing this, but he didn't really give any specifics. He didn't say about funding rebels in Syria. He didn't really talk about drones, which is fine. He doesn't have to give specifics in every single talk. But I think when you call out the U.S. military and the government and us, our foreign policy being responsible for death and destruction, I think giving at least one or two specifics in there, would have been helpful to people other than ourselves and other libertarians who kind of already have these views as Gary does.
Fair enough. But overall, what'd you think?
Oh,
Would you give it
sure, Johnson.
Johnson. I agree. Johnson. We're going to move on into something we always try to fit in here, and Gary seems to continue to give us the ability to do so, and that is we're going to take a trip into the land of Liberty Make-Believe.
All right, Trolley. Neighborhood of Make-Believe.
And recently in the land of Liberty Make-Believe, Gary Johnson had an appearance on CNN. He was asked about the recent attacks in New York. There was a bombing in New York, and there was also some stabbings in Minnesota. And Gary's response was, he basically said he's just grateful that nobody got hurt. And I mean, people got hurt. I don't know how else to say it. People were stabbed. People were injured. I imagine that he meant to say in his head, I'm glad nobody was killed. I have to think that's what he meant. But again, this is it's another one of these gaffes, but this one, I mean, I don't know how you could say something like that. What did you think of that, Adam?
Do we know that he actually meant to say that nobody got killed? Did he actually come out afterwards and
that's a good point, because that's a great point, because no, I haven't seen him clarify that at all, which he does seem to do often. So I think he's just accepting it as a gaffe and moving on. But I mean, those are his exact quotes. I'm just grateful that nobody got hurt.
I think he has had several other gaffes since, so this one has kind of been brushed under the rug. But I'll give you two answers. If he, did come out afterwards and say, I meant to say that no one got killed, I really don't have a problem with it. I mean, I have a problem with the tongue sticking out, and I think Gary was largely responsible for the reaction to that. But this is just an honest human mistake, and that happens. If we're going to jump on the guy for saying five words that aren't true, but by mistake, a verbal typo, if you will, I think that's a little crazy, and people are going overboard in this 24-hour news cycle.
The sad part is,
looking for anything.
I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt a little bit and say he might have meant to say killed, but I wish I was more confident of it, because I'm actually not. Like, I don't know. I just don't know with Gary, and that's what sucks. I don't know if Gary just is having a mental gaffe like he seems to happen so often, even though it's been I don't know. He always says 30 days since he last used weed. Maybe it's been 60 or 90 now, but I think there might be some residual effects still. That's all I'm saying. So
yeah, I mean that's bad. That's bad if he said that coming from an uninformed standpoint rather than just. Now, I'm not sure, because this benefit of the doubt, I'm not sure I can go full JohnsOFF.
can't get rid of it a JohnsON. So I think I'm going to bring back something that's become a thing on the show, and I'm going to give this a Johns. What do you think?
Yeah, I guess I'll have to give it a Johns. I want to give Gary the benefit of the doubt, and I want to give the media a JohnsOFF and the public reaction to this a JohnsOFF or whatever you want to say. But since we can't do that, and we're not really sure what the truth is with this, I guess I'll give it Johns also.
One Johns. All right. And moving on to our last item. This is a moment where we're going to have to step out of the land of liberty make-believe, and we're going to head into a little Mind Weld. And this is an item that I became aware of thanks to our good friend Roger Paxton over at the Lava Flow podcast. I'm not sure if I even would have found out about this otherwise, but I'm going to read a little bit from this article from the Boston Globe. The headline, I love their headline, because their headline says, "Libertarian for Life," in quotes, donates to GOP candidate. And this is a story about Bill Weld, who proclaimed on the stage after Alicia Dern asked him to make this pledge at the Libertarian Party convention that he is a libertarian for life. Okay. And then a few months after the convention, it's very important, after. If it was before the convention, maybe I could forgive this. But after the convention, Bill Weld made 2 donations totaling $450 to support Republican Chris Sununu's bid to become New Hampshire governor this fall. Sununu is running against a couple opponents. One of them is Democrat Colin Van Ostern, and the other is Libertarian State Representative Max Abramson. So, you have Libertarian for Life, Bill Weld, the vice presidential candidate of this party, actively supporting an opponent of a libertarian candidate in New Hampshire. Now, look, I'm not Mr. You always have to be loyal to your party in all circumstances, but when you're the freaking VP candidate and you're pledged to be a libertarian for life, this is just so unacceptable to me. I can't even believe it. This is, first of all, how much is that $450 really helping this guy? So for Weld to just toss that out there, and to me, this is, I'm not a part of the Libertarian committee that decides these things, but to me, this is something that is grounds for being kicked off the ticket. I mean, you're actively working against the party that you are representing and have pledged to support. I don't see how this can possibly be excused. Adam, your thoughts?
There's really only one possible way that this can be excused, and that is if this particular Republican that he donated to is more libertarian than the libertarian candidate running. Like, for example... Yeah,
like, what if he donated to Justin Amash against, like, someone who is kind of, like, a lame libertarian?
Yeah.
Maybe we would forgive that.
Like Gary. Like, if it was Justin Amash running against Gary or Ron Paul running against Gary, and someone donated to those Republicans instead of Gary. I
guarantee Bill Weld would donate to a Republican against Gary in any other race in the world if that came up. No doubt about it.
You know what I also thought was kind of funny about this is that, I'm not sure what the exact, this is New Hampshire, you said?
Yeah.
I'm not sure the legality of how much money Bill Weld is allowed to donate to political candidates and this and that, but I thought Gary wanted Bill Weld on his team and on his ticket
to bring in the dough.
Yeah, bring in the dough, and this is what Bill Weld's got, a few $100s. Yeah. What happened to that big Bill Weld money?
Yeah, come on, Bill. I thought you were a big fundraiser. You can only afford $450 for your pal Sununu. Come on, cheapskate. Yeah, this Bill Weld guy.
It's terrible. Yeah, I think that's pretty awful. I mean, assuming that the Libertarian candidate is, significantly more libertarian than whoever the Republican that Bill Weld donated to is.
Yeah, I'm pretty confident in saying Chris Sununu is not a Liberty Republican, then that's why Bill Weld donated to him. I'm actually very confident in saying that.
Maybe I will get on my computer after this and send a couple of bucks to Max Abramson.
Yeah, it makes me. Everyone go look into Max Abramson. I don't know anything about him. Maybe he's a terrible neocon posing as a libertarian for all I know, but man, he can't be worse than a Sununu if he's backed by Weld.
I will let him know on Twitter about my disgust with Bill Weld about this as well.
All right, so that's I think it's obvious that, and we do, for the record, for people that are new to this, Weld-offs count against Johnson because Johnson begged for Bill Weld, and I think, Adam, we both agree here. This is definitely a JohnsOFF. Way off. Naughty, Bill Weld. All right, well, Adam, I really want to thank you for joining me today, for filling in for Brian and his nuptials. So hopefully he'll be back in a couple of weeks after he recovers from whatever people do at weddings. And in the meantime, I know you're going to be active in our forum, so people can find you in there and join this conversation. And I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story about this discussion group. It's a really interesting take on not the kind of perspective that we're usually going to get, and most people aren't going to have a libertarian mole inside these things. So really cool of you to come on and join us for that.
Oh, it was my pleasure. And I think the one thing that I took away from just attending this event was with Gary and this group really had nothing to do with Gary. It had more to do with myself sort of as an outsider there, and just how they kind of welcomed me with open arms and brought me into their group. And it just goes to show that it is possible that people can have civil discussions with each other and express differing ideas and maybe influence each other in a peaceful, civil way. So I think that sort of was really what I got out of this more than anything.
Good stuff, man. That's what we're trying to do here. Spread the ideas in a peaceful way. So, Adam, before I let you go, why don't you just let everyone know, anything you want to plug out there, or anything you want to share your Twitter? Let people know how they can get through to you.
If people want to reach out to me on Twitter, my Twitter handle is @AdamJChoit. CHOIT is how you spell my last name. I actually forgot to mention that when I was first inspired to become more of a follower and liberty activist, I started my YouTube channel a while back and actually put together a couple of sort of rapish rhymes about Ron Paul trying to help the campaign. And I'm Jewish, and people were questioning whether or not, Ron Paul was pro-Israel, people accusing him of being anti-Semitic. So I thought it was important that people know that Ron Paul did have support of Jewish people, and actually put out a video of me doing a little rhyme about Ron Paul and some various political topics, including the Fed, Israel, the NDAA, the drone war, and a couple of other topics as well. And I put that up on my YouTube channel, and that got some attention as well. Also a writer and a filmmaker, and I'm currently developing a couple of liberty-minded projects at the moment that I'm hoping to get off the ground. But other than that, I'm a screenwriter as well. So if anyone, if you're an agent out there, a producer looking to take on some clients and work with me, feel free to hit me up on Twitter as well.
Hey, you never know who's listening.
You never know who's listening.
LeBron James might be listening. Bill Weld might be listening. Max Abramson. We got a whole bunch of people listening to this thing.
That's right. One of the Weinsteins, perhaps.
Yeah, hopefully.
That's right. Now you never know, but
yeah, and we'll link to some of your raps that you did on YouTube. We'll link to some of those in the show notes today. And yeah, man, like I said, it's been a blast. Thanks for coming on. Until next time, folks. I've only got one more thing to ask you, and that is, of course, live long and live free.
It's a beautiful day in this LibertyHood, a beautiful day for a candidate. Would he be mine? Could he be mine? It's a Liberty day in this Johnsonwood, a Liberty-ish day for a Gary. Would he be mine? Could he be mine? I've never wanted to have a candidate just like you. I've always wanted to have a real libertarian who's schooled. But let's make the most of this beautiful day. Since we're together, we might as well say, would he be mine? Could he be mine? As long as he acts libertarian. Won't you please, won't you please, please won't you be a principled